couples get together for holidays or for birthdays or whatever, or family dinners and so forth, because I think children will always have the wish that the parents will get back together, and that's always then dashed. And I think that it creates a lot of confusion, and I think the reasons for the divorce then are hidden and murky, and it's all obfuscation, and I think children don't know what to do with that.
As you talked, I just, my kids watch The Parent Trap over and over and over, which involves, I mean, there's the it's the complete fantasy that, and when they watched it, the complete fantasy is that parents who've been divorced of these two twins are going to come back together and reunite and live happily ever after. And they watched it with friends of theirs from divorced families, and their friends from divorced families had exactly that impression that, oh gosh, maybe they will, and it was somewhat destructive for them.
I guess I should say that it is not, I don't think it's necessarily even a given that as we move forward into the kind of society that was discussed at the first panel, and I think Daniel mentioned kind of offhandedly, it is not necessarily so, I believe, that marriage without children should be even viewed legally as a comparable institution to marriage with children. Obviously, we talk about them very distinctly when we talk about social benefits and psychological benefits and so forth, or potential harms to something like a collaborative approach gone wrong. But I don't know what you think about this. I wouldn't be surprised if down the line, with changes in legislation and changes in policy, if the distinction becomes between marriage and not marriage, as opposed to family units with children and family units without children. That's just my kind of off-the-cuff speculation.
Let me say, there are proposals to have two-track divorce. Yeah. Yes, yes. Among others, Bill Galston has suggested that there be two tracks. That, for example, if there are children, that there has to be a longer waiting period. So making it harder to get divorced if children are involved as a way, I think, of forcing the parents to reconsider the decision.
Well, yeah. That's very, that reminds me. I was talking earlier before the panel with Daniel about something that exists in the cobwebs of my brain that, for all I know, exists in 15 states by now. That at least in the late 90s, the Louisiana legislature, I think, was trying to push forth a bill on a two-track marriage, but it was ex ante. It was called covenant marriage. That was basically an attempt
Only
to.
3 states.
It exists in 3 states. This, as I understand it, is an opt-in civil marriage union that imposes greater barriers to divorce, or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's an attempt, I guess, to replicate the religious covenant structure within the civil realm, right?
Essentially, it brings back fault divorce for the people who opt into it.
Okay.
And so it essentially says you pretty much agree you will not get divorced unless there is fault. Now, if you can prove fault, then right.
That and 250, you know.
Yes,
yeah.
right.
But I'm interested to what you're saying about the waiting period, the tracks, because I think, Daniel, your focus being on the kids of these situations, as we think forward about policy, potential policy prescriptions, I think you have some notion about this, right?
Well, it's that I do think that, again, I approach that, yes, the children need to be well loved, but children need stability and predictability. And so whatever form or fashion a family takes, the disruption of that is, I think, what I'm most concerned about. And I don't think that's ever good for kids. I think there's mitigating factors that can make it better. There's resilience, but in the end, it's hard. And I believe that there should be, as in medicine, an informed consent, that I think parents who divorce with children should have a certain number of hours that they understand what are the potential consequences to their children.
I'm very interested in, that's interesting, but there's a lot of these parent education programs coming up. The Sesame Street Workshop is just building one on how to talk to your kids about divorce. There's something called Sandcastles, which I think is actually mandated in 14 counties in Florida or something, which is a 3.5-hour course where kids sit with other kids their age whose parents are getting divorced, so they have a peer community and there's a workbook and they can talk about it. There's another one that a psychiatrist in New York does, and I think these things are so helpful, can be so helpful to kids. Some of them are teaching resilience, teaching parents how to talk to kids, teaching kids how to problem solve, teaching kids how to identify their own strengths. So I don't know about...
But it's so after the fact, though, because, I mean, resilience is a great thing, but kids who grow up in poverty or in violence, kids with resilience do better, but doesn't mean the violence or the poverty is good. So resilience, see, those deal after the fact, and they help children process feelings and not personalize, but I'm talking about beforehand. I think that we have to talk about parents should know what are the potential negative consequences of the disruption of stability in a family.
Yeah, I just think it's helpful to...
I'm not saying those are bad.
Yeah, no, but I mean, if you're in a bad marriage and then, there's all this research that shows that what damages kids is conflict. There's, hundreds of studies. Conflict between the parents, losing contact with a parent, inadequate resources, and instability. And there's a study by Michael Lamb at Cambridge that looks at 400 studies done over the last 40 years about what damages kids. And these are the things he comes up with, not even whether the other parent lives in the house, that just doesn't seem to track. It's about conflict. So I don't think you want to encourage parents to stay in their marriage because it's going to mess up the kids so bad while they're fighting over the dinner table. I don't think the fear, it seems like